Hi guys, welcome back to Taylor Talks Trades. Today we're in the new podcast studio space and I'm joined with Stuart Lillis from Limitless Automations. He actually did the podcast studio. It's usually cinema builds for him. However, he's ventured out into the podcast space, and who better than to have on as our first guest in the new space than the man who actually helped us put it all together. So welcome, Stuart.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so feels a bit strange being in here and not having a drill in my hand or a screwdriver.
That's what I was going to ask. How does it actually feel to be sat in here after weeks of ploughing all your time and energy into it, and now you're actually a guest? I'm not gonna lie, it's a bit. I feel like even when things were kind of setting up, I feel like I should be busy doing something. Yeah. But it's the same with, like you say, like I kind of do cinemas and things like that. But actually seeing the space come to life and things, that's what it's all about. And actually seeing it getting used. And it's the worst thing is when you fit out one of these rooms and it sees nothing but a dust sheet or a cloth. So it's I'm thinking. And it's been a bit of a journey for us, to be honest.
Yeah,
you've become quite invested in it all.
Some of your staff are starting with me next week, so that's probably now a good time to bring it up. So I've got some new starts, but
no, it's been quite the journey. So anyone who's been following the podcast and seeing what we're doing, especially if they've been watching, then you'll see that we have evolved over. I think this will be episode 67. Wow. And the 66 beforehand we were in the old flex space that we had, and then we moved here and we kept the same sort of vibe, but we were in this room. But it was always the goal that it was going to be turned into a better space. So it's good to have it here now. But we've
Absolutely.
just even just before recording and coming on live, we were just making all the wee finishing touches there, and we'll probably never quite be done, I don't think.
No,
to be honest. And even with you coming in, I can see you like looking at things the same way as I am, and you're like, oh, we could tweak that, we could move that. But no, the space is great, so thanks very much for sorting that out for us.
You're very welcome, and thanks for putting the faith in us.
Anyone who is listening and is interested in getting their podcast space up to scratch or a new one completely, then by all means go to Stuart. It's a very personal service, and he'll add a bit of time onto the job because he likes to have a good blether, but that's why we've got him on the pod. Plenty of conversation.
So this is a 3-hour podcast, right? This is
now Joe Rogan-esque. So let's go back to the start then. How did you get into the trades then?
I've been doing this a very long time, so I hate kind of looking back, but it's probably about kind of 25 years or so. I'll do that. So I'm one of these strange people that's always done this. I kind of fell into doing it. So most people come in from another trade. I studied music and audio technology with electronics. So, but whilst I was doing that, the Saturday job was I worked for what you would call a home automation company at the time. There was only a couple of them about, and they were both in Glasgow. And it was literally it was the job for beer money whilst I was studying, and I absolutely fell in love with it, and it just stuck. So so I went from the usual student jobs of working in a bar to kind of working in these multi-million-pound properties and these ridiculous experiences that you can't really, you'd never see coming. And
how does that evolve then? So the trade itself, like what is the trade here?
Well, do you know, it's quite fun. I keep saying, like, I've gone right back to the start of my career. So 25 years ago, smart home technology didn't really exist. You had custom cinemas, and they were only available to the uber rich. That was just the way. I mean, we're talking when we were CRT TVs. When you had to do a 40-inch TV, it was literally 3 guys in a van, and it came in a crate, and that was the old-fashioned CRT TV. So it was all cinemas and listening rooms, multi-room audio, so that you just got a keypad in the wall, and you can listen to music anywhere you go. And I was very lucky back then that the company I worked for, they had a contract with Lin Products. So I don't know if they're a Scottish-based company, Scottish manufacturer, but it's all very high-end audio equipment. So I was exposed to kind of the best that was possible from very, very early on in my career, which I'm very thankful for. I was still making less than minimum wage and crawling under floors and doing all the typical apprentice bits, but that's a university you can't really.
And it's almost like a trade that goes probably unseen then, because you would go into maybe like a mansion, £1 million plus house, say, for example, or whatever, and nobody would think about how the actual automation at the back end of that's actually done, and how those, like all these lighting features or the blinds and all these different things, or these audio systems, or like, you know, they would just go in and see the cinema room and go, wow, somebody, you know, somebody's put that together, that looks great, but they wouldn't be thinking about like what's actually behind the vinyl there, what's behind, why is the acoustic there, and all that sort of stuff.
That can always be the tricky bit. So I always try to, some of my best projects come via architects and interior designers, because they understand get you in at planning stage, and that's the most important thing. So like I say, I say my career's kind of went 360 in a lot of ways, because it's all the nice bits, the cinemas, and I'd probably say cinemas, audio and listening rooms is a big thing again. That kind of completely died a death, and then it slowly went into automation, and cinema started kind of going like this and this and this and this, and then COVID happened, you know. So and then and the timing of that was just, it happened whilst all this technology had just been galloping for a few years. And it's little things. It's things like you can run out and buy an Apple TV for, obviously it's the bargain of the AV world. It's £170, and you get a really nice experience, and you can get high or 4K ultra high definition video and audio now, so you can get spatial audio. So if you have this awesome cinema room with, say, 5 speakers or 19 speakers, it's fully experiential now. So you can go on Tidal or Apple Music, and you can sit in the middle of that room and have the orchestra around you, and that's relatively recent, you know. So that just coincided with people being stuck at home, getting fed up of that horrible little smart speaker that they've been using for a couple of years, and going, oh God, it sounds awful. We're paying whatever it is for Spotify or Tidal or Qboz, and getting this amazing content, but delivering it through a wee speaker this size. So people just started investing in their homes again. But it was the same as all the DIY and everything kind of got out of control a bit COVID time, and it just hasn't disappeared. But in fairness, we kind of it's always been the thing that I'm most passionate about. Is I didn't get into this industry because I love kind of putting Wi-Fi around people's houses. You know, it's a great thing, and it's a service that you offer, and it's part of the whole automation game. But I always kind of say, you kind of leave somebody's house and say, oh, look, you've got Wi-Fi down at the end of the garden, and, you know, you've got it up in the attic, and, oh, that's nice, you know. And but if you deliver a cinema that you've sat, similar to this room, we kind of did it to the render stage, so we kind of delivered all the designs and that kind of thing, introduced you to Mark Direct, so, which I tried to do. So we tried to make it a personal space. You walk away from that, you leave customers floating in air, and I'll go home with a smile like this all the way home, and that's the difference for me, you know. And it's it's a funny old industry. And
I think that's a good point to pick up on. Like, I'm a very visual person, and I like to see, before I do something, I like to see what the end result could be. Like, it's not that I'm not a massive risk taker, because I have taken quite a lot of risks probably in business especially, but I like to back a winning horse. Yeah. So when I was able to get the render done, and I knew how this space could look, and we evolved it a bit, but once I knew how it could look, then that made all the difference for me. So it was worthwhile spending that money at the beginning stage to then actually know that, like, you know, back that winning horse, and you actually delivered on it as well. Sometimes you could have a great render and maybe it doesn't get delivered to the render, but at least you've got
my favourite thing on Instagram. You see the Instagram to reality. I love that, and we'll probably do it in here, because I know this changed a little bit. We changed the colour here, which was the right call, by the way. I'll hold my hands up. You're absolutely right on that. So and even when I do it, I introduce you to Mark directly, and that was kind of and it just worked. But on my cinema projects and things like that, I will add very little margin to the renders just to cover my own time, and it's just because it's the best sales tool. It's once people see the room, particularly cinemas, and if you're covering distance. So say if I was doing a cinema up in Aberdeen or something like that, I can provide somebody with a 3D render. They can walk around with their headset on and actually feel the space and see, oh, do you know that works, but that doorway's not quite right. You know, now that I'm in the space, I can feel. It's a lot of work to move the doorway, but it'll be worth it, you know. So it's.
We're not moving any doorways in here. We'll just finally go in. We'll not be doing any of that. So for you then, how did you then transition into actually becoming what Limitless is now? Like, when did the point of you'd done like the apprenticeship
Yeah.
stuff, you'd learned the trade, you'd understood that, you'd worked your way up through whatever you were doing. Like, at what point did you then make that transition to go, I'm going to go self-employed?
Yeah, well, I didn't really make the choice. It happened. The choice happened to me. So
forced.
Yeah. Well, I'm probably a bit too risk adverse than I should be. So probably on a business or entrepreneurial podcast, it's not the news you want to hear, you know. But I've been doing this a long time. I've thought about it a lot, but it's never a good time. You know, it's like we've got a kid in the way, or we've just moved in the house, and these kind of things. It's never quite right. So I worked for one of the largest integrators, in the UK, but we're based in central Scotland, but we're a national company. You know, and I could tell the writing was on the wall, but I didn't expect them to go under anywhere near the time they did. So ultimately it led to, I got 24 hours notice. It was just like, we're shutting down. I was like, wow, right, okay. Like, but I'd been making plans in my head, but not physical plans as in there's a budget. And so, but it was absolutely the step that I required and gave me the massive confidence to go out and do it.
Yep.
You know, so
you'd been half thinking about starting up on your own, doing your own thing. And then
even with that, it was like, I'm going to do my own thing if this company goes under, and
if it comes to that.
And I always I like to think I'm quite loyal in those ways where I had the conversations with my boss, and my boss genuinely believed that you could. I always can see whenever any of these companies go under, and if people get burned on the way out and these kind of things, nobody does that on purpose, you know. And it's nobody goes out today thinking, I'm going to take a deposit and not delivering that. Yeah. You know, it's. If you're stuck in the middle of it, people get their heads in the sands and they're just doing everything they can to get out of it. So I could probably see things that he couldn't. It was just like, right, if this is going to happen, I'm going to help you not go down that route. But if it does, I'd already decided I'm going to do this myself.
It's an interesting point, just because I seen on LinkedIn that there was people receiving tenders through from like ISG and Haddon that have both just recently sort of went out of business, and like literally on the lead up to the week that they were going to shut the doors, and you just think, how much did the people in the offices know that's sending tenders over to companies that spend 2-3 days, sometimes 2 weeks on these tenders that literally are never even going to get seen? Like that it just seems disgraceful, and you almost think they either didn't know or they did and just didn't.
Yeah, but it's funny, these kind of...
That's scary. So how long ago was that then?
So that was 6 years ago now. So it's 6 years ago now. So it was August 2018.
I always remember the
I
dates
do.
and times,
Well, I remember
just because it's like such a pivotal. Oh shit!
Well, there were so many intense things. It was mad looking back now. It happened that day, and then I'd chatted to my boss, and I'd said, right, okay, and he's like, look, do you mind if I stay in the office today? I'm just gonna have a wee think and see what I do. And he was like, yeah. So I don't think they're shutting the doors till whenever they shut your doors, you're kicked out, kind of thing. So I went away. I didn't sleep that night. So I can't remember which order it was done, but I'd registered the company at like 2 a.m, registered the domain at 8 a.m. Or sorry, at 4 a.m. I was back in the office at 8 a.m, and at that point I'd said to my boss, look, is it okay if I approach customers? Because there's a lot of customers that have been kind of left halfway through projects and things like that, and it'll allow me to get started, you know. And that worked out as it was a bit of a two-way sword, that one, whereas I was able to get some clients to get me started, but it was a lot of those clients had paid deposits and things hadn't been delivered.
Probably weren't very happy either at this
point.
So,
and some of them are clients today, and they appreciate everything I did to get them where they are, and but it was tough, those first little bits. And then I had a manufacturer, and like I say, that company went under, and they did their best to do it the right way, but they left a few people owing. I had two separate, one, a massive manufacturer call me up and threaten me with a lawsuit, and another one. And hands up, when the company goes into administration, and then you set it up within 24 hours notice, people automatically go in company's house and say, oh, this guy's phoenixed. And it was just, and I had to kind of get a forensic accountant in here. There's nothing to do with me.
So were you director level at that last business? No, so it was there was nothing like in terms of... There was
no way it could be related.
So you were one day an employee, and then literally like 2 days later you were a self-employed businessman as such, and so there wasn't a connection, but these people thought maybe this was a front, or could have actually thought your boss was maybe behind it, and it was just your name on the thing. Wow. Hi guys, sorry to interrupt the episode, but I just wanted to say a massive thank you to Scope Branding for being our new podcast sponsor. As you're aware, if you've been listening and following the podcast, I'm really big on my branding and having branded workwear. We've teamed up with these guys. They've done all our work at Taylor Roofs, Taylor Solar, and now the Taylor Talks brand here that you can see. They're good quality, good prices, and really good service. Go and connect with Scope Branding on their social media channels, check out their website, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the episode.
My old boss, and we get on great now, but at the time we didn't really see eye to eye for a few months after it, for obvious reasons. These things
It's a tough time.
Yeah, and I kind of see it from his side as well. What I was going through and what he was going through. I think he walked around Stockbridge for 3 months with us just staring at the pavement, So there was so we didn't really talk, and then all this was kind of going on. And one of them I was quite open with. I'd known the guy like kind of 20 years. I was like, I've got no connection to that business, and he was like, oh well, you could have given us a heads up. I was like, I couldn't give myself a heads up. I'm
24 hours.
I was like a couple of months into not paying myself any wages. I was like, yeah, if there was any notice, I would have given it, but. Yeah, and
just desperate times act for desperate measures, and people want to go and try and get what they're due, basically.
Well, I think for me that it was a bit frustrating because I put myself in silly situations, got myself in some silly hell situations, just working every hour I could to get the business started. And it just so happened I met my wife and we went out to go to the festival, and this was the first I'd given myself half a day off, not even a day off. And that was the day that phone call came through. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. It's like, I don't need this right now. This is not the day. But these things are never going to happen at the right time. So but you always kind of remember moving forward that's who these people are, and people they don't mess about.
Yeah, and like you said there as well that now you're not scared of things like that. So is that the resilience that we build through them? I think
there's a little bit of comfort, kind of knowing that, and
you survived.
We survived, and I know as a company, there's no dishonesty. We do things the right way, and like go on, try. It's just like I'm quite happy to stand beside anything we do as a company, and you try your hardest. And it's and like I say, it's like all you're going to do is you're going to affect a small LTD, and it's you're going to affect one person, just for a bit of spite,
So you've niched into the cinema build space, really. What was it like in the beginning? Did that happen from the start, or did you have to almost take on everything to find out what work you did want to do and what you didn't want to do? And then
there's a bit of trial and error.
Come in.
There's a bit of trial and error, and then I think part of it, even though I've done this a long, long time, and I always find it people come to me for advice, and I'm just like, I'm kind of learning as I go as well. I've done this for a long time, so I can anything about technology, anything about cinemas, anything about lighting control, technically. What sort
of advice would somebody come to you for, like in business, and then
in business,
and you almost feel like imposter syndrome to be like,
massive
I'm kind of winging it myself. Yeah.
Well, it's more, and to be honest with it, it was only 2 years ago I got I had a business management software, but it was just really bookkeeping software, so it was just something that I could create quotes and send invoices and things like that. But the biggest thing was I'm not going to mention names or anything, but it's something that it pulls everything together, and I could look back at the projects that made you money, the ones that ultimately cost you money, kind of moving forward, and doing something that kind of we've kind of chatted before. I like kind of staying on the smaller side of things, like kind of the big enough to care, big enough to cope, small enough to care, that kind of thing. So, but it is kind of a creative industry, and you're kind of creating these rooms, and you get quite passionate, and you get fully into it, So, as far as I used to outsource a little bit more. I think we were talking about a little bit more as far as building the rooms. But then it's always something I've always been. I would never class myself as a joiner, but it's always been an interest to me, and it's always been a bit that I'd like to get stuck into. And that's where finding guys to get into this industry, or say people, it's a bit like construction. One of the things that I kind of I'd love to see if we could get a bit more diversity in the space, because we seem to just it seems to be an industry full of guys. Same with construction, but. Completely lost in a tangent there.
I was basically saying, like, in the early days, I'm assuming that you did what most early startup businesses need to do, is they take on everything and anything just to pay the wages.
Absolutely.
But there is a point in time where, like, you niched into the cinema build space. So I was more or less just saying, effectively, how did you slot into that becoming the thing? Like, was it like, did you do cinema builds back then at the beginning?
I've always, yeah.
I know you said COVID had a big part in this, where it almost people maybe looked. COVID was a wild time, wasn't it, for like home improvements, because people were literally going, oh, we're not going on the cruise this year, let's get the roof done. Like roofing was exciting at that point as well, gardens and everything. I didn't think about the inside home improvements until you actually spoke about it, but it makes sense. People were doing kitchens, bathrooms, and then cinema rooms, everything. So like, was that the turning point, or were you doing them before that? But
I'd been doing it
because as a niche thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
And is it only like high net worths that can do it, or is it becoming more reachable now?
Well, yeah, absolutely. There's a lot. Yeah,
I'm asking you about 5 questions.
No. Well, the thing
is,
well, they all make a lot of sense, and they all ring true. So I'd done it a long time, and it was always a part of the business. But like I say, it wasn't what brought people to us. It was always like the automation side, and that's always going to be a big part of what the business is, and it's a kind of bread and butter kind of side of things, you know. So and the cinemas is something we're very passionate about. Want it to be more of a focus of the business. But I mean, even like little things like the fabric walls they have in here. So that's a company called Cinema Build Systems that we work very, very closely with. They started off as an installer. But they were a bit ahead of the game with cinemas up in Scotland. So they were finding they were building the same rooms over and over again. But somewhere they were investing in all the right tools, and they were building out these same frameworks and all that kind of thing. Like, well, let's start making them and going around and talking to other integrators and kind of. But that was all. I think they were just starting just as I was. That other company was kind of turning around. So we're roughly about the same age. But they made it possible that I could go back to clients and say, look, this is a render, and I could pull their products together. Obviously, there'll be custom bits and niche bits and things that you tweak as you go, but that wasn't really possible 6 years ago, you know. And I think even Apple's got kind of Vision Pro. I mean, they're horrendously expensive now, and they're Gen 1, so they'll break kind of. But in 2-3 years' time, it's going to be a point where I don't want to ever see a world where there's the full family are sitting with Vision Pro goggles on. But
if it helps the cinema build sales, bring it on.
well, it's more having one in stock that I can send up to people and just kind of say, look, is this what you're looking for? And then as an industry, I'm a member of CDL, which is our trade organisation, and I try to do as much as I can to help and bring what we've talked about, the skill shortage in construction in general. I'd read the other day that KNX is, I like to say, brand agnostic as much as I can, because then you offer the right experience for your client. But KNX is one of the lighting and kind of heating control and kind of things like that. But the average programmer is now 55. It's like, this is madness, absolute madness. Why are we not bringing people in here? And we've had lots of discussions outside of this and kind of ways to do that. And so I kind of help out our trade body as much as possible, and I kind of a CDA outreach instructor, so I can go into architects and M&E consultants and chat through what you should be thinking about as far as a connected home, as far as what cabling you should be put in place, but just what technology you should really be thinking about at the planning stage. But then they've also got one just for cinemas, and if there's any architects or M&E consultants that are listening, it's REBA certified, so I can come in and do a CPD, and you can earn some REBA points, and with 45 minutes I'll buy you a sandwich and earn some points.
Sounds fun. No, good. And so with regards to the cinema build stuff, is that going to become more and more of?
It will do.
That's
definitely.
where you want. Here's one, right? So, like, as I'm thinking about all of that there, and the setup that we've got here now, you know, the acoustic paneling and the fabrics and stuff, and like, you're quite geeky about it, to be honest, right? And like, I'm not really. I just want to make sure, like, when I was. Like, we were designing the space as such, I was like, it needs to look visually really good, but you do your bit with like making sure it sounds good. Is like, you know, obviously I wanted it to look good, I wanted it to sound good. I just wanted to make sure that this felt like a podcast studio rather than it's a room where we've thrown 2 chairs into it and we're just going to sit and have a blather as such. So I think we've achieved that, but a big part of this is what I'm finding is like, you don't know what you don't know in this space. So I would imagine there's like, any of the listeners or anybody who comes across this podcast would probably not know half of the stuff that you would even do. So have you got like a YouTube channel or somewhere they can go and get that information?
Not yet, but do you know what's funny? It's something that I've been thinking about a lot, kind of particularly the last few days, and it's well, to be honest, you've been very kind and kind of offered I could kind of use a bit of this space. I've done a few YouTube tutorials and kind of unboxings and things like that. To be completely honest with you, it was a COVID project.
Yeah.
So
when we all had more time,
we had more time, and then kind of the gates were open. We had to run out and just kind of pay the bills, you know. So it's always been something I've enjoyed and something I've kind of wanted to go back to. And even how this room happened, it was quite natural. It was I think it was actually months after you'd posted something on LinkedIn, and I've followed the podcast for a while. Like anybody that's a lot of trades, they're always listening to podcasts all day. People that tend to work on their own an awful lot, you'll find that. So I've listened to listened to the podcast an awful lot. I seen that, and then I was like, maybe I should reach out to that guy. Jamie seems a nice guy, and just kind of it's not exactly what we do, but we
could help. We
could do something a lot better. And it's one of these. I see a lot even big podcasts, and it's always there's a TV with a cable hanging down. It looks like it's in the back of a laundry room somewhere, you know. And it's
that's where we started, mate.
Well, do you know? And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But when you look at it, it's like just little things. It's like there's behind all these sheets. There's kind of 43 mil of foam. And it's from my background, kind of professionally, kind of being around recording studios and things, and just personally, I've always played in bands and stuff like that since I young kid. So I've always been around that. So it's not that difficult.
So anyone who's listening, we don't seem to have a massive engagement with the podcast. Like so many people I come across, like I'll see it like industry events, or I'll see it out and about, and or they'll maybe message me on LinkedIn and literally be like, oh, I've been listening to the podcast for the last year and a half, and I just thought I would reach out. I see that you're now doing mentoring, or you're doing this, or how do I get involved, whatever it may be. But really, this is one of these things where you never really hear from anyone. So I'd like to start to get more in engagement. So if anybody is listening and you're interested in like cinema build systems or anything that Limitless Automation does, put something in the comments somewhere and let us know what you'd like to find out about, because then that'll put accountability on Stuart as well, and he has to go and get his Instagram topped up with educational videos on what it is they do, because some of the stuff is actually outstanding, but you wouldn't think it's something you could have in your home unless you literally you see it. So if you are tuning in, start to be heard. Let us know that you're there, because we're getting to this point now where we're investing some money in the space. You know, we're trying to make the podcast better and better. So we want to hear from you guys as well, and see how we get you the information that you need. Stuart, from a sort of get into a wee bit of the geeky side of it then. I know like some people will be listening, some will be watching, right? So obviously if you're watching, Stuart will point at this, but if you're listening, like what is like, do you know what's happening here with the acoustic panel, and like what's happening with the fabrics, what's in behind there? Like do your bit, do you know, the geeky stuff you do where I just go, just do what you need to do, and I usually walk away. But I'm interested in that. But you'll know, like I'm running like multiple businesses, and it's like I come into the room and, do you know, I just trust that you know what you're doing, so I kind of leave you to be the expert. But for anybody that might be listening that actually wants to geek out on it a wee bit as well, then like fire away. What have we got in here?
So for me, without going down the fully cheesy side, music was the big thing for me as a kid. Absolutely obsessed with music. Then got into kind of movies later, and then when I got into this industry, massively into movies. It's cheesy as anything, but movies are escape. Movies are magic, you know, and it's having a space in your own home where you can disappear and I wish I had space for home cinema at home. I don't. My kids call it fake cinema. So we have the kind of living room, which so it can be completely bespoke cinemas. It can be something in your own space. There's always a few compromises where you need to kind of put in a living room. You can't. It's difficult to put a projector because you're not going to shut all the blinds just because when you're having your coffee and your cornflakes and watching the news in the morning. But having that space to completely escape to is incredible. I like the phrase kind of getting the director's intent. You know, kind of. Being able to disappear, put your phones in the other room, everybody kind of sitting as a family and just completely escaping. And the importance of doing it properly, I was going to say it's the quiet bits between the notes. Like one of the most impressive movies you'll ever watch in a cinema is Schindler's List, and it's the quiet scenes, and that's what all of this treatment does. When everything disappears and you've got the dynamics of that orchestra that just kind of explode out of nowhere. You know, if you're sitting in your living room and you can kind of hear the fridge buzzing away in the other room, you can hear somebody kind of stamping about upstairs, but to have a room that goes completely quiet and then explodes and everything's around you, and that's pretty special, you know, and it's pulling.
Mate,
all
I'm
those
just want to
different
stick on
elements
Braveheart right now in this room and just go, yes.
Brilliant, yeah, let's do it.
Drawing me right in there. No, that makes sense, and I think that like the way that the modern world is, with the distractions, with the phones and all the devices, and just like if I take my house as the example, do you know, there's 6 years in there. It is crazy.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
there's no peace. So I've got a garage, a double garage that needs converted still. We've got building warrant for it, and we've done part of the works in the house, and that's still outstanding.
I'll just get my iPad and get a quote together for me.
Exactly. And we've got the back living room as well. It's like it literally just, we end up using it for hoarding clothes and stuff like that. It's became like a laundry, like a massive, like it's a room, but it's like a big version of a laundry cupboard. And when I think of like what you're saying there, I'm like, you should have a space that is literally like get in there, switch off, and enjoy.
Yeah.
Like enjoy a movie, like in the sense that it's meant to be. A lot of that's away. I actually can't remember the last time us as a family sat and watched a movie. Like
it's sad. It's kind of well. There's two things that I always kind of, anytime I go by, anytime I see a double garage, I know it's just filled with junk, and you're like, and they're always almost perfect. You always get the 4x6 or the 6x7. They're always kind of good shapes for cinemas, and that's typically roughly what a double garage is. Anytime I go through one of these new estates, I'm like, that's full of rubbish. That's full of rubbish.
Right. So if I'm going to do it, where are we going to put all the stuff?
You've got an attic. Attics are no good for cinemas, so that's. But I get asked a lot, and do you know, after lockdown, and I seen it recently. One of the big cinema chains announced that they're not going into administration, but they're shutting half of their theatres. But for me, it's a lot of people do what I do, kind of start celebrating, and kind of people have forgot the symbiotic relationship we have for a long time. I'm very, very confident any cinema I put in will outclass 99% of the commercial cinemas you go out there. It's just and that's a relatively low bar for me now. That's just a kind of given, but there's things that happen in a commercial cinema, and I still go with my kids every single month. We go to the cinema as a family, and what I like about it is
you shouldn't be funding that.
Yeah, well, what you pointed out
they're
was
the enemy.
But they're not. This is the kind of thing. It's a lot of the technology we get trickles down. One of the first things that happened when COVID happened was that Sony pulled out of commercial cinemas some of the best mid to high end projectors in home cinema are Sony, and that technology trickled down from commercial cinema.
Yeah.
And for me, it was just like, if all these commercial cinemas shut, do you think people are going to be investing hundreds of thousands of pounds mixing these so that it can be played in 15 speakers so that you can play it in your little soundbar below your TV? It's not going to happen, you know. So, but well, I tend to spend half my time in the cinema people watching. I get my overpriced chewy popcorn and my flat juice, and I kind of sit and I watch exactly what seats are they choosing. Are they in the sweet spot? Are they kind of what you used to always call it the kind of the kings and queens seat, kind of right where they should be? And I watch how people interact, and then there's the parents that will sit through their phones all the way through the trailers and then put it in their phone just at the last minute, and I'm just like, but getting that
so
back.
You're seeing how they're taking that full experience in.
Getting that full experience, and I know kind of in a fully dedicated cinema, people tend not to look at their phones as much, but I know if there's an email bouncing away in your phone, that people are going to do it, and that's where I think commercial cinema is still important. Yes, the experience is not as great as something we can create for you, but I think they both coexist, you know. Whereas the kind of media room type cinemas, the cinema in your lounge, the difference there is if somebody's phone rings, they'll answer it, you know, whereas people won't typically pause a movie and so.
And for you then, so you're just on your own really with the business. Sometimes pull in subcontractors here and there if you need them. What's next for you? Are you planning to grow the business?
So I think like you say, it's the way that the business kind of started. It's the business has always done well and supported itself, but you kind of just feel, I think, always kind of, even when I worked for other people, I was a technical guy. I wasn't a sales guy. I wasn't running the business end of these kind of things. And then very early on, a manufacturer told me, you need to get an Instagram and you need to get on there and you need to do that. And some of the best cinemas I've won have been through that, which is incredible. It still blows my mind.
And you've been in magazines and stuff as well.
Yeah, so that kind of started things kind of moving a little bit. Kind of got featured in Home Cinema Choice and a few trade magazines and things like that. And where it's been great for me is we're West Lothian based, and I remember kind of when I got the company phone numbers, like, do you want to know 131? I was like, nah, I want people to know where I'm from, not kind of try to hide anything. That's where we are. And so, but huge word of mouth. So kind of, I was going to say, like, we somehow became the go-to cinema people in Edinburgh, you know. But the nice thing about, so that's all word of mouth, which is great, and it's the best business to win. But it doesn't really jump regions, you know. So I'm kind of West Lothian based. I'm originally from Glasgow, you know. So well, you know, it's like we can support both cities almost as easy as each other, and anywhere around. So and that's where kind of social media for me is great. It shows that we can, and like I say, and that's where the magazine. Sorry, going back to that, the amount of interest we got from that and people picking it up from all over, and I was getting calls from down south. It was like, would you consider doing this down just outside of London and stuff like that? I was like, I can help you in the design stage, but it's important for me that any project we take on, we can support today, tomorrow, and in 6 months' time.
That's where it's difficult, because as business owners, as soon as we build that traction and now everybody wants to use us, you've got that tough spot of, well, it's just me. And I remember in the early days when it was just me, like one van with like my little brother with me, and then I got my first employee on quite early on. So there was 3 years, one van. And then, you know, everybody in West Lothian sort of, oh, will you give me a quote? Will you give me a quote? And then it's like, oh, we're going to need to get another van. And like, we've just kept that kind of trend going.
But you were doing that, you were dropping the guys at site, and then you were going off with the van, and they were going, oh, we need bits. And
all of that stuff. So it's like, there is that hard, like, you want to put yourself out there, you want to market, but then there's obviously only so much that you can take on. But
well, I think it's, the model's been great for, I like being small, and I think it was almost, there's a bit of an element of PTSD there after kind of working for this massive company, and then it went, and there was a lot of it was volume as well, and kind of, I found that I didn't massively enjoy being the kind of HR guy. I found that
it's not for everybody, mate.
No, so if you're managing teams of installs and kind of, and I found I was the firefighter. I was the guy that people came to. You're half counsellor, you're half kind of there's this dispute and there's that dispute, and I'm kind of doing that. And the first few months, although it was massively stressful, and I was working every hour God could send, and putting myself probably in silly situations health-wise, the passion just came flooding back, and it was just, wow, like, I absolutely love doing this, and I forgot about that, and it was just because all I was doing was running around to site, fix this, fix that, and somebody's not got this, or that van's broken down, and and it was that. So I've really enjoyed staying small. The subcontractor model worked really well because it's all guys that I've known for like 10, 15 years. Yeah. So I know they'll do a great job. They will work on my behalf, and I can trust them on site, and I can come in and check, and I feel like I do work with them. But you know how it goes with subcontractors, you can't always guarantee that there's somebody there. And it was good to prove the theory, but now kind of moving forward, I know that it's time to bring things in-house, and I want to be able to go on a holiday and not feel that I'm letting people down, you know. It's like, so little things like that, it's time to grow up, you know. So
good, mate. Anybody looking to get in touch with you, what's the best way to reach out to you?
So you can always get me via our website. We've got all our contact details there, but Instagram's huge for me. That seems to be I need to get a little bit more active on all the other platforms. Instagram's been a nice little space.
I would throw the challenge at you, mate. Like, one thing I've found about podcasts is, like, obviously we've done a fair whack of episodes in our own podcast now, and I've been on multiple other podcasts. It's like a line in the sand, so you always be able to use this episode to look back on. So, like, I think if we say, like, go and make that content happen, and let's see where you are in a year's time, we'll maybe have you back on if you do a good job at it, you know.
Sounds good.
So it's like a wee bit of accountability from us. But yeah, thanks so much for coming on, mate. Anybody who's listening to the pod, drop us a comment. Get in touch with Stuart. Let us know what you've enjoyed about the episode. Let us know what you would like to see next. If you can subscribe to our YouTube channel, hit us up on the socials and give us a follow. And we just want to keep growing the podcast and get more awesome stories and into the niche trades as well, and hearing about them. So thanks again to everybody who continues to listen or watch. And we'll catch up with you all soon. Thanks very much.